Thank you for inviting me to this conference. It is wonderful to be here in this beautiful hall. And this is actually already my fourth visit to Hungary. I like coming here. I think we have a lot of things that we need to talk about. And this time, you asked me to talk about rethinking the role of technology in judicial reform. I think we can read the slides. Is there someone who cannot read the slides from here? Because it was a little difficult on the last presentation. Okay, so let's go ahead. Why is rethinking technology important for the independence of the judiciary? Because that's what the theme of this conference. So let's see, why would we rethink that? Well, one reason why we have to keep rethinking the role of technology is that it evolves, and I'll show you in a minute how that has been going on. And we're now at a stage where that we actually call digital transformation, where we're moving from technology as a tool to technology as an environment that we work in, and we really have to rethink also our business processes, how we do our work. There are regulation issues involved, and we have to think about what are really our purposes. So I'll take you on a little journey of the way I have been rethinking the role of technology in courts. So let's start in the 1980s. Some of you will probably actually remember that, some may not. What we had then was standalone computers. They're like, you know, a box of cards, but a little smarter than that, but they're not attached to anything, so they cannot share information with other computers. It's just this one thing. So what could they do? They were case databases, and it was a big improvement because all of a sudden we could have this information at our fingertips in this one machine. The machines could do text production, which was really new. We could start throwing away the typewriters. It could do legal research at a very low level, and it could do audio recording, although we did not do a lot of audio recording at the time. But on the whole, what it did was it made our access to information easier. So this is what the technology could do at the time. And the way we thought about it was, well, it can save time from the judges because of the document production, and it can save administrative time because the case management will become easier. So efficiency and cost saving were the main goals. And at the same time, there was the rise of new public management, a philosophy that stimulated thinking about cost saving in public institutions. So, and the technology actually helped new public management to become more effective and also more of a mainstream idea. So there we are, the 1980s. And now we move to the 1990s. And I also moved in the 1990s from my court in Alkmaar, my first court, to my second court in Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam, when I got there in 1993, they already had a network that was really innovative at the time. But here you see, all of a sudden, computers can start exchanging information. And so what do? Network computers. They support sharing information between judges and the administration. They also support cooperation. We started drafting judgments with a multiple judge chamber, and we could move drafts around and make comments and then get them back. We could extract data from the case management system to populate our documents. So that was a big improvement. What that needed was standardization of the server setup, because the programs that we used then had to be able to find data in the same place in every court. So that was a big change, because before everybody could have the setup they wanted and nobody minded. So that was new, and it was a big change. But the goals didn't really change. Still, it can save administrative time, it can save judicial time, and efficiency and cost saving remained the goals that we were expected to strive for. So new public management was still, let's say, the reigning philosophy. What was new, that we had to think about who had access to what information, and what the, let's say, the rules or the conventions were around sharing information, because then you need to, for instance, if the three of us as judges would be drafting a document, we would have to agree on who does the drafting, who is the first person to have a review, who's the second, so all kinds of things, conventions and rules needed to be invented for all this to work smoothly. So we needed rules. And of course, if you think, oh, we need rules, then the next question is, who is going to set those rules? So that is a new question that came up in the 90s when we started doing this kind of thing. So then we are into the 2000s, and that's when things start to get really rough and changing. The picture you see here is of a completely digital civil court that we set up for the Netherlands. And so what happens here is e-platforms. So that means that parties can file their cases online, digitally. Courts can exchange information with court users directly. More standardization is necessary because the outside users have to know what they can expect, and it has to be the same for every user. So that needs more regulation. And so the question who decides about that regulation becomes more urgent. And that makes governance actually a big issue. So that's what I will be talking about the rest of the show. The goals somehow, in the court's thinking, the goals didn't change much. It was still saving cost and time, but improving value for the users is something you need to think about if you're giving users access to your system. So improving values for the court users means you have to think about what those values actually are. And new public management values began to be less, let's say, less important, but what are the values that judiciaries have to be governed by? And ultimately, my conclusion was that they should be governed by the European Court of Convention of Human Rights, and particularly Article 6.1, which gives requirements also for how the technology in the court should work. So, so far so good. So what is new here is who has access to information that needs regulation. The procedure is completely digital. That means that there needs to be changes to the procedural regulation. More rules are needed, and again, the big question is who decides about those rules. And organizations in general who are successful at recognizing this issue early enough are the ones that are most successful at actually making the digital transformation. And I can tell you that usually those organizations are not necessarily courts and judiciaries. So let's see what happens next. Well, so the new philosophy is digital transformation means improving value delivery. And so the rethinking is in what do we think when we say value delivery. I'll skip that one. So easier court access, sure. Equal access to information. Oops, that was too far. There can be less delay with instant messaging and immediacy of the availability of information. These things are all examples of more compliance with Article 6.1, but I'm coming back to that later. What comes next? What's this? Artificial intelligence, the new kid on the block. My observation about AI is that we tend to talk about AI as if we know what it is, and as if it's the same everywhere, and it isn't. It can be many different things. What does it do? What it cannot do? So let's have a look at what this kind of AI does. This is retrieval augmented generation. That is a set of algorithms that is used a lot these days by law offices. If you pay LexisNexis a lot of money, they will give it to you. So how does this work? Now, what we see of what the RAG does is that we give it a prompt. We've come up with a prompt ourselves. And the other thing that we see is the output. What we do not see is what happens in between. So let's see what happens in between. The first thing that happens is that the prompt is translated into a query text, so the algorithm can actually find information. Or how does it do that? It goes looking for words that are similar in the database that you give it, and that could be your case law database, it could be the internet, whatever. That's the choice that you have to make. So it will find words that are similar, and it will also find things that are similar in meaning. And so it gets a collection of what it finds, relevant documents. So it then has a set of relevant documents, and what it does after that is filter them and rank them. So this most probably means that it will start throwing things away that it thinks are not relevant, and then it ranks them according to what it thinks, based on its statistical operations, because that's what it does, to what are the most important ones for your prompt. So it does that, and the next thing it does, it gives those documents to the LLM, your large language model, and the large language model generates a text out of that. So that's the final response, and that's what we see. And if we're lucky, we think, wow, that's great. But maybe sometimes we also think, that's not really what I was looking for, or this is just plain wrong, because that with operations like this, that's what can happen. Because we still have no idea what exactly happens in the middle. We know that there are selections made, but on the basis of what, we don't know. So this is AI, and this is the new, let's say, the new development that means that necessitates us to think about technology and about the values that we deliver with it. So just a brief intermission. I'm sure you do this too. I thought I'd do a little exercise with Copilot, which I have in my Microsoft suite. And so I asked Copilot to give me a picture of a Dutch court. And what I needed was a picture of a Dutch court building, because I needed that for a presentation. What I got is this, which is very nice, lovely picture, lots of tulips. The building looks like the Rijksmuseum. People go to court by boat. Wonderful. So it's nice, but it's a fabulation, or a hallucination, if you want to call it that. Because what does a Dutch court really look like? Well, this is my court in Amsterdam. It's really different. And as a judge, I'm always looking for, not for speculation or for visions or predictions, I'm looking for evidence and experience, the real world. So that's what I've tried to do when I thought about artificial intelligence, to find some evidence. And something that I found was the survey that the Consultative Council of European Judges did for its Opinion 26. Opinion 26 is is the second opinion about technology. We'll get back to the first one later. They asked the members of the CCJE what AI is used in your court. And so that's the question, and they got 9 answers out of the 33 members of CCJE. And what did they tell us? Oh, our government has a strategy. We have a vision. We have a plan for measures. Well, that's already quite good. We're setting up a think tank. Oh, that's interesting. This was Germany. Germany said, we will set up a think tank. And of course, it will be very interesting to follow what this think tank is actually doing. We have some initiatives. we're doing pilot projects. Oh, I'd be interested to know what they're doing. We have some ideas, and we're using chatbots for some things. Chatbots are algorithms that can answer simple questions with simple answers. They can be very useful for efficiency purposes and for access to justice purposes. So that was 2 years ago, so they're probably, the courts in Europe have moved on. We'd have to have another look at what they're doing right now. So let's look at digital transformation as a process. What is going on is that we're developing justice platforms, integrated digital procedures, also called digital justice, and more artificial intelligence. So what's the idea? What do they need to do? Improve the key values that underpin the delivery of justice. What the Opinion 26 has said is that the change process should not undermine the institutional foundations. It should be clear that we are still courts, that dispense justice. Technology must serve the judicial function, and its primary role should not be to either control judges or to save costs. So there we are. Meanwhile, I have for the past almost 4 years worked for the European Law Institute on a project called the digitalization of civil justice in Europe. And that has been a bumpy ride, I must say, because we had to do a lot of thinking and rethinking. Problem with a topic like this is it's not stable. It keeps changing. When we started, AI was a speculative kind of thing that, oh yeah, we'll think about it, but not important. But of course now things are becoming very different. And it means that with the moving target, we have to keep moving the document along as well. Our starting point is that digitalization is justice value delivery. And the reason why we're doing the project is that it is a difficult thing to do for courts, and we would like to help them to set them on the right path. And that is quite a necessity because democracy and justice values are not a luxury right now. They are in many countries in Europe, including my own, they are at some kind of stake, so we have to really think about them. And information technology, we said, should be a means to improve the administration of justice. This is what we already said in the CCJE opinion number 14 in 2011. I was the expert for that particular opinion. And in opinion 26, which built on 14, they said that justice values need to be enhanced. So we can actually make justice values work better if we think about technology in the right way. So that's why the rethinking is a necessity. And our conclusion was that what we need is principles to orient judiciaries on the right path. So improving access to justice and procedural justice are the two main drivers for our exercise. When I started doing my PhD about nearly 20 years ago by now, I told my colleagues in the court in Amsterdam that that's what I was doing, and they would say, yeah, but it's so difficult. Now, I wasn't going to write about why it was difficult, but I felt it was obvious that this was such a big issue that I'd better do something about it. So I studied it, and this is what was more or less the result. Results of the projects are often disappointing. There are failures, there are delays. We can talk for a long time about what is considered a failure and what is not. Development and implementation take a long time, and they really do. And the issues are complexity. The thing about we have no idea how complex the work that we do actually is. And we don't have to think about it because we know how it works. But if you have to analyze it in order to make it digital, you have to really think about every little bit. And we found out that it is much more complex than you can imagine beforehand. So there will be surprises along the way, and you have to deal with them. And there are lots of interdependencies with other organizations, with the law, with lots of things. So that makes digitalization difficult. So it's always difficult, everywhere, and we underestimate how complex things are. But there is also a particular problem with judiciaries, and that's our culture, and that is the way we work. What do we do? Someone brings a case to court and says, so and so did this, and I have been damaged by it, and I want compensation. So we look at something that has happened in the past to blame someone, and maybe to order them to offer compensation. And in criminal justice, it's not really all that different, because there again, someone is accused of an infraction in the past, and we need to decide about a sanction. So our natural habit is to look back on something that happened and to blame someone for it. So looking ahead at something that's not yet there, but that we have to think about how it could work, is not our natural habit. So that makes developing technology for courts problematic, because it's not what we're used to doing. So that's why for courts it's particularly difficult. Let's have another look at Opinion 14. That's the one we did in 2011. So it said a couple of things. One is that this was the first time that the judiciaries in Europe actually produced an opinion about technology. And I must admit, I'm still quite proud of what we did there. Because we already said that we should improve the administration of justice and facilitate users' access to courts. It should also reinforce the safeguards. So these are all requirements of the technology. The technology should not be doing this, it should be doing that. And that is the basis for the projects that we've done since. And the follow-on opinion, that is number 26, that came out in November 2023. It built on what we had already done. It discussed impartiality and independence. It should support impartiality as well as institutional independence. That was a step forward. We didn't dare say that in 2011 just yet. What is also new is something that comes up with artificial intelligence. Who's making the decisions? We had the whole debate about robot judges. The opinion says that ultimately decision-making should be carried out by the judges. And judges should be involved in getting and controlling and actually managing the information technology. Now, not as individuals, but as an organization. So this is not what we want, is it? So institutional and individual independence must be supported by the technology. It should safeguard fairness and impartiality and judicial independence, and be designed to actually do that and to improve access to information. And it can support accountability with digital information that can be used for reporting. I'm beginning to feel like I'm doing a kind of a confession. Was not the idea. The idea was to take you along on the thinking that we have done on how technology might work, what the requirements are. This is more about standards for the governance. The governance should have a judicial majority. The difficulty is that judicial governance across Europe is institutionally so different that it's very hard to say something very concrete about how it should be done. Because, for instance, if we heard about Italy, and I've had a lot of opportunity to look at what's going on in Germany, in the UK, in Spain. I did an advisory project in Spain. And they are all so different that we cannot tell the judiciaries to do it one way or another. So the standards have to be at a higher level of abstraction, and every judiciary has to find a way to comply with those standards. So that's what made it difficult. But anyway, the decision power should be with the institution of the judiciary as such. That is clear, we think. So again, some evidence. I found survey questions by the CCJE for the two opinions, and I thought, let's see if we can find if the participation of judges in this kind of decision making is actually changing. So we did a survey in 2011 and asked who determines the IT for the courts, and the answers we got was that in 12 cases it's the Ministry of Justice, the Judicial Council in 15 of the 33 cases. And do judges participate? Yes, did 14 of our respondents actually say. Now, if we look at the survey that was done in 2023, the Ministry of Justice, 9 instead of 12, the Judicial Council, 13 instead of 15. I have to look into that because it's really amazing. There were also situations that I could not really determine as one or the other, so I called them hybrid, and there were 6 of those. And we asked how many cases do judges participate in the decision making? And in 28 of the 33, judges are now at least taking at least part of the decision making process, which I think is an improvement. And if we display that graphically, it looks like this. So this is 2011, and it's the yellow section is the judicial participation. And if we look at 2023, the yellow section has grown considerably. So that's progress, but we may not be there yet. When we start doing IT development as judiciaries, there are things that we need to learn. Both culture and capacity for development needs certain, let's say, competences that we do not naturally have. And so remember, this is court culture. We tend to look back at things, and if something doesn't go right, we tend to blame them for it. I experienced a lot of that when I was doing the system. Oh, the system doesn't work. Oh, okay. If it doesn't work, that's a learning point. That is not something that you blame someone for. So what do we need? Judiciaries need to have at least a part of their organization that is forward-looking. I think judiciaries learned in the COVID crisis that they have to be more aware of things that can go seriously wrong and how to deal with it. So risk management. They need to develop capacity for experimentation. And experimentation is when things go wrong and you learn from them and then you try again until you get it right. Risk management is also something that, I think as lawyers we tend to think if there is a 5% risk that something goes wrong, we're not going to do it. But if you keep, let's say, experiencing risk as something that means that you shouldn't do it, you're not going to get very far. So acceptance of risk and risk management, how do we deal with the risks when they arise, is something that judiciaries have to learn. They also have to learn that trial and error is part of development. And of course, there needs to be adequate funding. That means that project funding should not stop when the product result has been delivered, but because the technology will still need to be developed for a long time, and there needs to be adequate funding for that. And I think this is my final slide. So some takeaways from what I've tried to tell you about my journey on the way to value delivery. So justice value delivery is what is our main goal, not cost savings or efficiency. And most of it, actually, if you think about it, but I have to do a little more writing on that, most of it is about access to information. So conclusions, justice values, Article 6.1. Impartiality is the primary value, and we need independence to actually support impartial judging. And institutional independence is required if we want to develop our IT for courts, and we need to accept experimentation and risk management.